Tonight, we are not travelling back to marble columns or dusty scrolls. We are staying right here, in the middle of your sleepless night, when the clock ticks too loudly, the phone glows too brightly, and a single question whispers louder than both. Why am I here? The existentialists wrestled with this unease long before it kept you scrolling at 3 in the morning. Sartre saw freedom as a dizzying height Camus called life absurd when the universe gave us silence instead of meaning, and both agreed on one thing: no one is coming to hand you a script, you write it yourself. This is not just philosophy for French cafes and people in black turtlenecks. It is about you, trying to figure out how not to drown in choices, how to face the gaze of others without losing yourself, how to love without guarantees, and how to fold laundry without collapsing under the weight of the absurd. Existential angst is not just doom and gloom. It is strangely funny, deeply human, and sometimes even liberating. Because if life has no preset meaning, then everything from answering emails to chasing dreams becomes a chance to make your own. So before you roll your eyes at midnight musings and heavy words, remember this. The existentialists were not trying to crush you with despair. They were trying to teach you how to live awake, even in a world that refuses to explain itself. Like the video, subscribe, because tonight we meet Sartre, Camus, and yes, you, in the fog of midnight. And maybe, just maybe, we discover that the angst keeping you awake is also the freedom waiting for you to choose. The room is dark, except for the thin glow of your phone resting on the nightstand. Its screen pulses like a quiet heartbeat, daring you to pick it up again, though you know the endless scroll will not answer the ache that keeps you awake. The clock ticks louder than it should, each second stretching into the next, as if time itself were mocking your restlessness. You stare at the ceiling, and in that silence the first whisper comes uninvited. Why am I here? Not here in this bed or this house, but here, alive, in this very moment where the night feels infinite. The question slices through the dark, sharper than any alarm, and once it arrives, it refuses to leave. You shift under the covers, but the thought follows you. The ordinary walls of your room seem different now, heavier, as though they know something you do not. The posters on the wall, the pile of laundry in the corner, the faint hum of a refrigerator in another room, all of it becomes strange, almost unreal. You blink and realize you are not just tired. You are staring into the quiet face of existence itself. You begin to sense the weight of a truth most people bury beneath schedules and noise. Life has no script waiting for you. No signposts, no clear reason written in the stars. You are a character without lines, standing on a stage that stretches endlessly into shadows. The phone tempts you again, the light a promise of distraction. But as your hand hovers over it, you pause. What if distraction is exactly what has stolen the answers all along? You pull your hand back and keep listening to the silence, to the steady ticking of the clock that insists on counting time whether you want it or not. Each second feels like a reminder. You were given hours and days and years, but not instructions. Your chest tightens with a mix of fear and freedom. What if that is the point? What if being here means you must decide what here even means? Images flash in your head. School hallways filled with faces, streets buzzing with cars, the quiet kitchen table where your family eats dinner. You realize that every person you pass, every voice you hear, is carrying the same secret midnight question, whether they admit it or not. The teacher who lectures about history, the cashier at the grocery store, even your closest friend. Beneath the surface, everyone is asking in their own way, why am I here? Yet most will drown it out with music, chatter, and sleep. You, in this moment, are one of the few who cannot escape it. The night deepens, the clock ticks, and the ceiling above you holds steady. No divine message writes itself across the plaster. No voice from beyond breaks the silence. It is only you, awake in the middle of everything, feeling both impossibly small and strangely powerful. The whisper grows louder, not to torment you, but to invite you. You are not meant to have an answer handed down. You are meant to wrestle, to wonder, to choose. Midnight is not your enemy, it is your doorway. And as you lie there with the question burning quietly inside you, the truth begins to form. The very act of asking may be the beginning of freedom. You step into the hallway, and at first nothing feels unusual. The walls are the same faded color they have always been. The lights hum with their dull and familiar buzz, and the doors are shut just as they were the day before. Yet tonight, something feels different, like the air itself has thickened. You pause, looking at the floor, the ceiling, the pattern of the tiles that suddenly seem too deliberate, too artificial. It is as if the world has quietly pulled back a curtain to reveal its strangeness, and you are standing in the middle of it without warning. A chill runs through you, though the air has not changed. The hallway, which once carried the ordinary noise of footsteps and laughter, now feels empty in a way that unsettles you. Every detail seems to declare that the universe does not care whether you are here or not. The silence echoes louder than any voice, reminding you that behind all the busy routines and familiar faces, existence offers no warm reassurance. It's simply island. The absurd makes itself known not with thunder or disaster, but with a quiet knock in moments just like this, when an ordinary place suddenly refuses to feel safe or normal. You glance at the exit sign glowing red at the end of the hall. It feels less like safety and more like a taunt. Where would you even go if you walked through that door? Outside the night would be waiting, stretching endlessly over rooftops and streets, silent and indifferent. The trees would sway without caring who looked at them. The stars would burn as they have for millions of years, with no thought of you lying awake or standing alone. The weight of it presses against your chest. You are alive in a universe that did not ask for you and does not explain why you are here. That realization, terrifying as it is also the heart of what philosophers like Camus meant by the absurd. You take a step forward, and the sound of your shoe against the floor echoes louder than it should. For a second, you are aware of yourself in a way that feels too sharp. You are a person, breathing, moving, deciding, inside a world that does not notice you. The hallway becomes a mirror for your own existence. You think of the faces you pass every day, each person carrying their own secrets and fears, each one alone with the same question. They laugh, they study, they scroll through their phones, but underneath they too face the silence of a universe that refuses to explain itself. The feeling is not just fear, it is clarity. The absurd does not come to crush you, though it feels heavy at first. It comes to wake you, to shake you out of the illusion that life will hand you meaning, if you simply wait long enough. The hallway is empty, but the emptiness is a challenge. If the world is indifferent, then it is you who must decide what matters. The knock from nothingness is not an ending, but a beginning. It is the sound of freedom calling, even if it arrives in silence. The kitchen is quiet, except for the faint drip of the coffee maker and the clink of dishes in the sink. The smell of bitter grounds fills the air, sharp and comforting, but tonight it feels different. You sit at the table staring at the chipped edge of a mug, and suddenly the ordinary space feels like a stage. Every movement, every sound, feels rehearsed, as if you are performing a role you never auditioned for. You pour the coffee, you wash the plates, you lean against the counter, and beneath it all, a question stirs. Am I living as myself, or am I hiding inside the costume of who I think I am supposed to be? Sartre called this bad faith, the quiet lie we tell ourselves when we pretend we have no choice. You tell yourself you must act the part of the good student, the good friend, the good child, as if these roles were carved in stone. You wear them like uniforms, repeating lines handed down to you by parents, teachers, bosses, and even strangers. You smile when expected, nod when told, laugh at the right time, all the while shrinking your freedom to fit inside someone else's script. At first it feels easier this way, like slipping on a mask, but eventually the mask grows heavy, and you forget where it ends, and you begin. The sink fills with soapy water, and your reflection shimmers on the surface for a moment. It looks like you, but it does not feel like you. You realize how many times today you acted as if you were trapped, when in truth you were choosing. You blamed the assignment for your stress, the boss for your tiredness, the friend for your silence, as if these things removed your power. But Sartre insists you always have a choice, even when the options are painful. To pretend otherwise is to live in bad faith, and in this kitchen, with the hum of the refrigerator and the clock ticking on the wall, the lie becomes impossible to ignore. You pick up a spoon and stare at it, ordinary metal reflecting light. You remember how Sartre once described a waiter in a cafe, moving too perfectly, too carefully, like a parody of what a waiter should be. In trying to be the perfect worker, he lost his own reality. The spoon in your hand feels the same, a reminder of how easy it is to slip into roles so tightly that you forget the freedom hiding underneath. You wonder how many times you have played the part of the perfect listener, the obedient student, the dependable friend, when all along you wanted to speak differently, act differently, live differently. The coffee cools, the dishes drip dry, and the kitchen waits in silence. You feel the weight of freedom pressing against your chest, both terrifying and electric. The costumes are not chains, unless you keep pretending they are. You can still choose to take them off, to step out of the script, to stop hiding behind what is expected. In this small room, with nothing but dishes and a fading smell of coffee, Sartre's voice lingers. You are not the role you play. You are the author who decides if the play continues. The street is quiet except for the hum of passing cars and the faint click of the traffic signal changing colours. You stand at the crosswalk, waiting for the light to shift, watching the red hand glow stubbornly in front of you. People shuffle past, some staring at their phones, others staring straight ahead with empty eyes, all of them waiting like you. It is a small moment, so ordinary it feels invisible, but then something strange creeps in. You realize the world is not giving you a reason to stand here or to move forward. It simply exists, indifferent to your waiting, your thoughts, or your purpose. In that realization, you feel the chill of what Camus called the absurd. The absurd is not a monster hiding in shadows. It is the collision between your hunger for meaning and the silence of the universe. Standing there with the red hand glowing, you suddenly feel how much you have wanted life to explain itself. You wanted the light to mean something, the waiting to symbolize something, the crossing to lead to something more. But the world does not bargain with you. The cars rush by because engines run. The signal changes because wires and circuits obey, not because fate or destiny has written a special message for you. Life does not hand you meaning on a silver plate. It shrugs, and you are left staring at it. Camus wrote about this silence with brutal honesty. He said life is absurd not because it is meaningless, but because we demand meaning from it and receive none. At first, the thought feels cruel, like the ground slipping out from under your feet. Why study? Why love? Why try, if the world offers no script? But as you stand at the crosswalk, you begin to see the other side. If life has no preset meaning, then nothing is locked in stone. No cosmic law demands that you become one thing or another. You are not trapped in a story already written. You are free to write your own. The light flickers, green at last, and the crowd around you surges forward. Shoes slap against the asphalt, jackets flutter in the cool air, voices murmur and fade. You step forward too, but with a different awareness now. The crosswalk is just a crosswalk, yet the act of moving, of choosing to walk, feels like a quiet revolt. Camus believed that once you recognize the absurd, the next step is not despair, but defiance. You stop bargaining with life to give you answers, and instead you give life your own answers. Each step you take, each choice you make, becomes your declaration. You reach the other side, and the world continues as if nothing happened. Cars rumble by, neon signs flicker in shop windows, A dog barks in the distance. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has. The crosswalk has shown you what Camus meant. The world will not hand you a meaning, but you can still create one. In that act, small and steady, you discover that freedom is not waiting for the light to turn. Freedom is realizing you choose what the walk means. Imagine standing on the edge of a tall building. The city stretches below, lights flickering like scattered stars, cars crawling along streets that look smaller than toys. The air presses against your chest and your stomach twists, not because you want to fall, but because you know you could. That dizzy feeling, the rush of possibility mixed with fear, is the best way to understand freedom. It is not wings that carry you to safety. It is height, the terrifying awareness that you can step in any direction, and nothing guarantees you will step right. Philosophers like Kierkegaard and Sartre called this feeling the vertigo of freedom. You are not chained to a single path, no matter how much it sometimes feels that way. Each choice you make, from the clothes you wear to the friends you keep to the dreams you chase, is like standing at the edge, deciding which way to move. Most people try to escape this dizziness by pretending they have no choice at all. They blame parents, society, destiny, anything to avoid the spinning sensation that comes with knowing the future is unwritten. But the truth cannot be hidden forever. At some point, whether in the quiet of midnight or in the middle of a crowded street, the vertigo will come. You might feel it when filling out an application, when deciding whether to tell someone how you really feel, when standing in front of a mirror, wondering who you want to become. The ground feels shaky because you realize there is no map waiting for you. Teachers may guide you, friends may influence you, traditions may push you, but none of them can decide for you. That space between possibilities is dizzying, and it can make you want to retreat back into safety, into routines where choices seem smaller, where the illusion of certainty numbs the fear. But what if the vertigo is not the enemy? What if it is proof that you are awake, that you are free in a way no script could allow? The dizziness comes from standing in front of endless possibility, not from being trapped. Sartre believed this vertigo is the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that whatever you choose you will own, and that your life will be shaped by those choices. There are no guarantees, but there is authenticity in stepping forward anyway. That is what makes freedom both a burden and a gift. The building fades, the city fades, and you return to your everyday world. Yet the lesson stays with you. Freedom will not always feel like soaring. More often, it will feel like teetering on the edge, unsure and scared. But that is the price of being able to decide who you are. The vertigo is real, but so is the ground beneath your feet. Every step you take into that dizzy uncertainty is a step into a life that is yours alone. And maybe that is what freedom truly is. Not the promise of safety, but the courage to walk forward when nothing guarantees you are right. The clock reads past midnight, and the room is quiet, but you are still awake. A notebook sits on the desk, blank pages glowing faintly under the lamp, waiting for the words you promised to write. The assignment is due, the message is unsent, the choice is unmade, and yet you whisper to yourself that you will handle it later. Later is a soft lie, easy to believe, almost comforting, like a blanket you pull tighter to keep out the cold. You convince yourself tomorrow will bring clarity, energy, courage. But deep down you know what midnight knows. Later is not a plan. Later is a delay you use to escape the weight of deciding. Philosophers like Sartre would call this an evasion of freedom. Every moment you postpone is a moment you refuse to own. You act as if time is endless, as if choices will wait for you like loyal pets. But the truth is harsher. The world moves forward whether you move with it or not. The lie of later is not harmless. It quietly shapes your life, turning your power into passivity, your potential into silence. Midnight exposes the bluff, because there, in the darkness, no distractions remain. The truth stands bare. You had the chance to act, and you chose not to. You scroll through your phone, you imagine better circumstances, You invent excuses. You tell yourself you need more information, more practice, more permission. But each excuse is a mask for the same fear, the fear of responsibility. To act is to risk being wrong, to risk being judged, to risk failing. Procrastination becomes not laziness, but philosophy, a belief that by waiting, you can escape the responsibility of freedom. But the waiting itself is a choice, and the consequences still arrive. The blank page remains blank, the message remains unsent, the life you imagined remains imagined. Think of how many times you have said tomorrow. Tomorrow I will study. Tomorrow I will confess how I feel. Tomorrow I will change my habits. Each tomorrow piles up like stones, building walls around your freedom. Eventually, the tomorrows blur into weeks, months, years. The future you thought you were saving never arrives, because it was always disguised as later. Midnight calls your bluff because in its silence you cannot hide from the truth. You are not waiting for later. You are choosing not to act now. The clock ticks on, and the lie grows thinner. Midnight dares you to see it clearly. There is no perfect moment, no magical later, where the fear disappears and certainty replaces doubt. There is only now, raw and unpolished, waiting for you to step into it. To choose is frightening, but to endlessly delay is its own form of defeat. The night presses closer, and you realize that freedom does not wait for later. It demands that you act, here and now, even if your hands shake and your heart races. Midnight knows what you already suspect. Later is a lie, and the only real time you have is now. The fluorescent lights hum above you as you push the cart slowly through the grocery store. The air smells faintly of detergent and overripe fruit, and the speakers play a song you barely notice. You turn into aisle 7 and reach for a box of cereal, but then something strange happens. The box feels too solid in your hand, too real, almost foreign. You stare at the bright colours and cartoon mascot, and a sudden dizziness creeps in. You place it back on the shelf, but the shelves themselves begin to feel odd. Each item sits there heavy with its own presence, not for you, not for anyone, just existing. The ordinary moment twists into something unsettling. This is what Sartre once called nausea, when the world reveals itself as raw existence and you feel your own place in it exposed. You glance around the aisle. Rows of soup, cans gleam under the lights, their labels lined perfectly. But they no longer look harmless. They look excessive, unnecessary, almost mocking. You feel the same way about yourself, standing there clutching a shopping cart, realizing you too are just here, a body moving among objects that never asked for your presence. The nausea rises because you sense how fragile and contingent you are. You exist, but you could, just as easily, not have existed. There is no cosmic reason for you to be in aisle 7 under humming lights at this exact hour. And yet, you are here. The weight of that fact makes your chest tighten. Sartre described nausea as the moment when the curtain drops and reality stands naked. You see objects not as useful tools, but as things in themselves, indifferent to your routines. A chair is not simply for sitting, a box is not simply for eating, and you are not simply a student or a friend. Everything loses its assigned role and stares back at you with brute fact. Existence becomes too much, too raw, and in that flood of awareness you feel sick. But hidden inside the nausea is a revelation. If nothing has an assigned meaning, then you are not bound by any script. You are free to create meaning, to take responsibility for what you do in this strange, indifferent world. You grip the cart tighter and steady yourself. The cereal box is still on the shelf, the soup cans still shine, but your eyes see them differently now. They are just there, and so are you. The dizziness lingers, but beneath it, you sense something powerful. You are not a puppet controlled by the labels on these shelves, or by the expectations written for you outside these doors. You are the one who decides what matters, who takes the raw strangeness of existence and shapes it into purpose. The lights continue to hum, a child cries in the distance, and a cashier calls for cleanup on aisle 3. Life resumes its ordinary rhythm, but inside you something has shifted. The nausea does not destroy you. It wakes you. It forces you to see that you are free, unshaped by destiny, and responsible for what you choose to do next. Even in aisle 7, surrounded by soup cans and cereal boxes, you carry the dizzying, terrifying, and liberating truth that existence itself is yours to define. You stand in front of the bathroom mirror, toothbrush in hand, the faint sound of running water echoing in the tiled room. Your hair is messy, your eyes are heavy, and your reflection feels like a stranger staring back at you. For a moment, the familiar ritual of brushing your teeth and washing your face feels empty, mechanical, like you are just going through the motions without really choosing to. The face in the mirror does not answer you. It only reflects the quiet suspicion you already carry. Am I living my life, or is life simply happening to me? Camus wrote about a character named Meursault in his novel The Stranger. Meursault drifts through his days detached, unbothered by meaning or purpose. A man who responds to life with shrugs instead of decisions. At first, his detachment feels harmless, even calm. But as the story unfolds, it becomes clear how dangerous drifting can be. When you live unchosen, when you let the tide carry you without resisting, you risk becoming a stranger not just to the world, but to yourself. Standing in front of the mirror, you sense that same danger flickering in your reflection. The stranger in the mirror is not evil, it is indifferent. It stares back with blank eyes, echoing every time you said, "maybe later," every time you went along to avoid making a decision, every time you let someone else's choice become your path. It shows you how easy it is to fall asleep while awake, to live days and weeks on autopilot. You realize how fragile identity becomes when it is not chosen but borrowed from routines, roles, and expectations. The danger is not losing your reflection. The danger is losing the connection between the reflection and the person standing there. You rinse your face and grip the edge of the sink. Water drips down your cheeks, cool and grounding, but the unease remains. Camus warned that life without chosen meaning becomes absurd, a hollow performance with no conviction. To drift like Meursault is to surrender your freedom without even noticing. The mirror reflects that surrender, a quiet reminder that if you do not choose, the world will choose for you, and you will watch yourself fade into the background of your own life. The stranger in the mirror waits silently. It will not tell you who you are or who you should be. That responsibility belongs to you alone. You can shrug like Meursault and let each day blur into the next, or you can face the absurdity of existence and claim it as your own. The toothbrush clatters back into its cup, the faucet squeaks shut, and the reflection remains. You take a breath, steady and deep, and see something different now. The stranger is still there, but so are you, awake enough to recognize the danger. That awareness is the first act of defiance, the first small revolt. To live unchosen is to vanish. To choose, even in small ways, is to return to yourself. You are born into stories that were written before you ever opened your eyes. Families hand them down like heirlooms, cultures press them into your skin, and even the algorithms that shape your screens whisper them back at you until they sound like truth. You are told what kind of person you should be, which paths are acceptable, what success looks like, what failure looks like, and which dreams are worth chasing. These scripts are so carefully rehearsed that most people spend their entire lives acting them out without realizing they are on stage. But there comes a moment, usually quiet and unsettling, when the lines no longer fit in your mouth. That is when you begin to notice the script. It can be as simple as hearing your parents' expectations echoing in your head when you think about your future. It can be the voice of culture insisting that happiness comes only with money, status, or approval. It can be the algorithm showing you the same images over and over until you begin to mistake them for your own desires. These scripts wrap around you invisibly, and you follow them because they promise safety, belonging, and clarity. But eventually, you sense the cost. To live by someone else's story is to shrink your own freedom until it can no longer breathe. Refusing the script does not mean hating your family or abandoning your community. It means recognizing that the role handed to you is not the entirety of who you are. Sartre believed that people slip into bad faith when they pretend they are only the roles assigned to them. A good son, a good student, a good worker. These identities may carry meaning, but they are not prisons. When you accept them blindly, you let them replace your freedom. When you examine them and choose consciously, you reclaim that freedom. The difference between living and acting is whether you are the one writing the lines. You picture yourself walking off a stage, the audience expecting you to keep performing. The lights dim, the script trembles in your hands, and you drop it. For a moment, the silence feels terrifying. Without the script, you do not know what to say, what to do, who to be. But in that silence is the first taste of authenticity. No one is feeding you lines anymore. Each word, each decision, must come from you. That responsibility is heavy, but it is also exhilarating. You are no longer a character. You are the author. The world will not clap when you refuse the script. In fact, it may push back harder, trying to pull you back into your old role. But if you hold steady, if you listen carefully to your own voice instead of the loud ones around you, the story begins to change. The role you decline becomes the life you choose. And one day, when you glance back, you will see that walking away from an old story was not the end. It was the beginning of your own. You have probably heard these lines before. Maybe you have even said them yourself. That is just how I am. I had no choice. They made me do it. At first they sound harmless, almost like normal excuses everyone uses to smooth over awkward moments. But if you listen closely, each of them hides the same quiet trick. They take your freedom and smuggle it out of sight. Sartre called this bad faith, the way we pretend we are not free so we can dodge the responsibility of choosing. Once you learn to spot these evasions, it feels like playing a strange kind of bingo. Every excuse you hear is another square filled in on the card of self-deception. Take the phrase, "that is just how I am." It sounds like a confession of truth, but really it is a shield. You use it to avoid change, to make your habits feel like destiny. You say it when you do not want to face the fact that you could be different if you tried, but nothing about you is carved in stone. Every trait, every habit, every so-called flaw lives in the choices you repeat. To say that is just how I am is to pretend you are a statue, when in reality you are clay, always being reshaped by the decisions you make. Then there is, I had no choice. This one is sneaky because it often comes wrapped in a story of pressure. You had to do the assignment, you had to take the job, you had to stay silent, you had to go along. But look closer. You may have had limited options, maybe even terrible ones, but you still chose among them. Even refusing to act is a choice. When you say, I had no choice, what you mean is the choice was hard and you did not want to admit you made it. Pretending you were powerless is easier than carrying the weight of owning what you decided. And finally, there is, they made me. This excuse passes responsibility to someone else entirely. Your parents made you, your boss made you, your friends made you. You act as though you were dragged into your actions, like a puppet pulled by strings. But Sartre would remind you that even in those moments, you are free. You can comply, resist, argue, or walk away. Each option may carry consequences, some painful, but the decision still belongs to you. To say they made me is to lie about your freedom so you can escape the guilt of using it. The fluorescent light of self-honesty makes these excuses look flimsy. They are convenient masks, but they cannot cover reality forever. Bad faith may protect you from discomfort in the short term, but it leaves you hollow in the long term. When you catch yourself saying that is just how I am, or I had no choice, or they made me. Pause. Listen to the echo of the words and what they are hiding. Beneath the excuse lies the truth you are trying not to face. You are free, and with that freedom comes responsibility. The bingo game ends the moment you stop pretending and start playing with honesty. You scroll through your phone and see it everywhere. Posts about living authentically, quotes pasted over sunsets, selfies paired with declarations of realness. It sounds inspiring at first, but after a while, the words blur into an aesthetic, something polished and displayed like a new outfit. Authenticity begins to look like a brand rather than a way of living. You close the app and glance at your own reflection, wondering quietly if you too have been treating authenticity as another performance. The thought makes your chest tighten because deep down you know there is a difference between showing and being. Authenticity is not about proving you are real to others. It is about facing yourself without disguise. Sartre insisted that freedom is not about inventing a perfect identity and selling it to the world. It is about recognizing that you are always the author of your choices. When you confuse authenticity with performance, you start to live for the gaze of others. You post, you dress, you speak in ways meant to signal that you are genuine, but in doing so, you lose the very thing you claim to value. The performance becomes another mask, another costume in the endless play of roles. The danger of aesthetic authenticity is that it is shallow. It is like painting a door to look like wood grain while ignoring whether it actually opens. You might impress others with the image of your life, but when you are alone at midnight, staring at the ceiling, the question still burns. Is this really me, or is this just what I want people to believe? That question is harder to face than curating an image, because it demands honesty about your fears, contradictions, and desires. Authenticity, in the truest sense, is messy. It is not beautiful in every frame. It is full of doubts and wrong turns, but it belongs to you. To live authentically is to stop asking what will look good on the outside and start asking what feels true on the inside. This does not mean rejecting style or expression. It means refusing to let them define you. A jacket, a caption, a playlist, none of these can capture who you are. They can only reflect choices, and those choices gain weight not from how they appear, but from why you made them. To author your life is to accept responsibility for those reasons, to own them even when they are unpopular or misunderstood. The reflection in the glass stares back, and you realize no audience is watching right now, no likes, no comments, no performance. It is only you. This is the space where authenticity lives. It asks nothing more and nothing less than honesty. You may still share parts of yourself with the world, but the measure of truth will always be found in private moments like this. When the phone is off, when the room is quiet, when no one is there to clap or criticize, are you still choosing a life that feels yours? That is the heart of authenticity, not the aesthetic of seeming real, but the courage of actually being it. The fluorescent lights buzz faintly above your head as you sit at the long table, another meeting that seems to stretch on without end. Papers shuffle, voices drone, slides flicker across a projector screen, and yet nothing of substance seems to happen. The clock ticks forward with stubborn precision, and you feel your mind drift to a strange awareness. This room, this meeting, this routine is absurd. The tasks pile up like sand, the discussions loop back on themselves, and still the machine of work grinds forward. You shift in your chair and realize Camus would have recognized this moment instantly. It is not dramatic rebellion that begins here, but the quiet clarity of revolt. The absurd does not only appear in midnight questions or empty streets, it lives in the sterile brightness of office spaces, in the predictable rhythm of schedules, in the rituals people repeat without thinking. The endless meetings become symbols of how easily life can slip into autopilot, how we act as though going through motions will bring us closer to meaning. You stare at the blinking cursor on a laptop screen and feel the same unease as Sisyphus pushing his boulder up the hill, only to watch it roll back down again. The work never ends, and its meaning never arrives. Yet here is where Camus insisted freedom still breathes. Revolt in this setting does not mean quitting in flames or storming out in defiance. It begins with seeing the absurdity clearly and refusing to be crushed by it. The meeting may be empty, the tasks repetitive, but you are not a machine built only to endure them. You can choose how to face them. When you stop expecting the work to deliver a hidden purpose and instead bring your own clarity to it, something changes. You begin to write your own reasons for being here. You decide which tasks you will treat as practice, which conversations you will use to sharpen your honesty, which small acts will remind you that you are more than a cog. You tap your pen against the table and smile faintly. The others may not notice, but inside you feel the difference. The revolt is not loud. It is steady, deliberate, and stubborn. To endure the absurd without surrendering to despair is its own act of rebellion. The meeting may still drag on, the reports may still repeat, but you refuse to let them define your worth. You claim the right to think, to notice, to live lucidly, even in fluorescent light. As the meeting finally ends and the group shuffles out, you gather your notes and feel strangely alive. Nothing monumental has changed. You still have tasks to complete, emails to send, and deadlines to face. But you have shifted. You carry the awareness that meaning is not hidden in the office, waiting to be found. It is something you bring with you, even into the most monotonous rooms. The absurd may surround you, but in choosing to see it and live anyway, you have already begun your revolt. The fog is thick, and the road ahead disappears after only a few steps. You stand there hesitating, straining your eyes for a clear sign, a perfect direction, a guarantee that the path you choose will lead somewhere safe. But the fog does not lift. No matter how long you wait, no matter how carefully you squint, certainty never comes. This is what decision often feels like, not only on misty nights, but in the middle of your own life. College applications, relationships, jobs, even daily choices, like what to say in a conversation, they are all wrapped in uncertainty. You want perfect reasons before you move, but none appear. That is when Sartre would remind you that choosing in the fog is unavoidable, and refusing to choose is itself another choice. The fantasy of certainty is tempting. You think if you just wait long enough, if you research hard enough, if you plan carefully enough, the fog will clear and the best option will shine like a beacon. But life rarely works that way. Even when you believe you have the facts, unexpected turns still appear. A school you thought was perfect disappoints. A friendship you thought would last forever drifts away. A job you thought would define you leaves you restless. The truth is that perfect reasons do not exist, because the future is always wrapped in mist. Waiting endlessly for clarity becomes another way of hiding from your freedom. So what do? You step forward anyway. You make the choice, not because it is guaranteed to be right, but because choosing is the only way to live. Camus would call this courage in the face of the absurd, moving without illusions. Sartre would say you create yourself through this decision, not before it. You do not wait to become the kind of person who can own it. You become that person by choosing and then standing by what you chose. Each act writes part of your identity, and with each step you grow into the author of your life. Of course, the fear remains. The fog does not disappear simply because you moved. You still feel doubt. You still imagine the other paths you could have taken. But here is where the second half of the lesson matters. To act is not enough. You must also own what you have done. That means refusing to collapse into regret, refusing to endlessly replay the scene in your mind as if rewinding could change it. It means saying, yes, that was my decision, and I will live it fully. Ownership transforms mistakes into lessons, risks into courage, and choices into freedom. As you keep walking, the fog does not vanish, but you notice something. The path behind you begins to form a story. You see not only the steps, but the shape of someone who dared to move, someone who refused to let uncertainty freeze them. The future will always be clouded, but that is not a curse. It is the stage where freedom takes form. You may not get perfect reasons, but you will always have the power to choose, and in choosing, you become. The alarm rings, the same sound it made yesterday, the same sound it will make tomorrow. You pull yourself out of bed, brush your teeth, gather your things, and begin the routine that feels so familiar it almost erases itself. The train ride, the car ride, the hallway walk, the clock in at work or the bell at school. Each step blurs into the next until you begin to wonder if this is all there is, if life is just a looping reel of repetition. It is in this monotony that Camus' image of Sisyphus begins to feel strangely close. A man pushing a boulder up a hill forever, only to watch it roll back down, condemned to repeat his task without end. At first, the story sounds like despair, but Camus flipped it into something else. He imagined Sisyphus happy. The commute, the daily grind, the repetitive tasks can feel like your own version of the hill and the boulder. You finish homework only to be assigned more. You complete a project at work only to receive another. You clean dishes that will be dirty again tomorrow. The cycle does not break, and you feel the absurdity pressing down. Why keep doing this if it never ends? But Camus' insight is sharp. Meaning is not delivered by the task itself. It is created in how you choose to carry it. Sisyphus cannot stop pushing the boulder, but he can decide to meet it with defiance instead of despair. When you ride the bus or walk into the office, you have the same choice. You can let the repetition crush you, or you can find small acts of revolt within it. Maybe it is the way you notice the light through the window each morning, different even if the routine is the same. Maybe it is the care you put into the smallest details of your work, treating them as craft rather than chores. Maybe it is the quiet decision to smile at someone, to speak honestly, to hold yourself with dignity, even in a place that tries to turn you into just another cog. These are not grand escapes, but subtle affirmations that you are more than your repetition. The hill will not vanish. The tasks will return. The boulder will roll back down every evening, waiting for you again in the morning. But instead of treating that as a curse, you can see it as a rhythm. Life will always circle, but you can fill those circles with your own meaning. The act of walking, the act of pushing, the act of enduring can be shaped into practice, into art, into quiet rebellion against despair. When the day ends and you head home, tired but aware, you feel something shift. The commute is still long, the tasks still pile up, but they no longer feel like chains. They feel like chances to choose, again and again, how to meet the absurd with dignity. Like Sisyphus, you do not wait for the hill to change. You change how you climb it, and in that decision, you find the strange possibility of happiness. Love is one of the strangest risks you will ever take, because no matter how deeply you feel it, no matter how many promises are whispered in the dark, there are never guarantees. You meet someone, and suddenly the world tilts. Their presence lights up your days. Their absence weighs on your chest, and for a while it feels like destiny itself has arranged the meeting. Movies and stories feed that feeling, painting love as cosmic, written in the stars, fated to last forever. But Sartre and Camus would both tell you a harder truth. Love is not written, it is chosen. And every day you must choose it again. Think of what happens when two people come together. It is not just feelings colliding, it is freedom meeting freedom. Each person carries their own desires, histories, fears, and projects. You cannot control them, and they cannot control you, even if the world tries to sell you the myth of possession. That is my person, we say, as if love could be sealed in ownership. But Sartre warned that the attempt to possess another's freedom is doomed. The very thing that makes love beautiful, that spark of choice and agency, is the same thing that resists being chained. Love is not about capturing someone. It is about walking beside them, knowing they could always turn away. This sounds frightening at first. Who wants to hear that there are no cosmic promises, no ironclad bonds? But it is in this fragility that love becomes more profound. If someone stays with you, not because fate demands it or society insists on it, but because they choose you freely, the connection is deeper, more real. Camus would call it an act of revolt against the indifference of the universe. The world does not care if you love or if you are loved. And yet you decide to build meaning together anyway, to weave laughter and comfort and struggle into something that defies the silence around you. Every relationship is a project. You build it through words, through small acts of care, through the way you navigate conflict and distance. It is not a statue carved once and left unchanged. It is a living work, and it survives only through the choices both people make. That means it will never be perfect. There will be days when freedom collides with freedom and sparks fly. There will be moments when the myths of possession creep in and you feel jealousy or fear. The work of love is not in pretending those feelings do not exist, but in facing them honestly, refusing to hide behind illusions of destiny. You sit across from someone you love, their face lit by lamplight, their eyes alive with their own thoughts and choices. They are not yours to own, and you are not theirs. You are both free, and in that freedom lies the risk and the wonder. To love without guarantees is to say yes to that risk, to accept that meaning is not handed to you but made between you. And when you both choose, again and again, to stay, that choice becomes the most radical promise of all. There is a weight that follows you after every decision, even the ones you try to forget. It shows up in the quiet moments, in the way you replay words you said or things you did, wondering if you could have acted differently. This weight is not punishment from the outside. It comes from within, from the recognition that your choices matter and that their ripples stretch farther than you can see. Sartre called this responsibility, and he carried it like a heavy bag. There are no scapegoats, no clauses in destiny to sign away your freedom. When you choose, you are the author of that action and everything that follows from it. It is tempting to shrug this off. You might say it was not really your fault, that someone else pushed you into it, or that fate had already decided the outcome. But those are disguises, ways to dodge the truth. Sartre believed that the moment you try to hand off responsibility, you slip into bad faith. You pretend you are not free, but the reality is that you were. Even silence is a choice. Even refusal is a choice. Even delay is a choice. And every one of those choices shapes the world around you, carving consequences that cannot be erased by excuses. This is where guilt and shame step in. Guilt is the recognition that you have failed to live up to the standard you set for yourself. Shame is the awareness that others see your failure too. These feelings sting, but they are also reminders of your freedom. They hurt because you know you could have acted otherwise. If destiny had truly written your script, there would be no reason to feel either. A puppet does not blush. A puppet does not regret. Only someone free enough to choose can carry guilt or shame. The heaviness of this truth can feel crushing. Sartre himself described it as nausea, the realization that nothing excuses you from being the author of your life. But the burden is also a form of dignity. To accept responsibility is to claim ownership of your existence. You stop looking for outside forces to blame and instead recognize that the meaning of your choices lies with you. This does not mean you will never make mistakes. It means that when you do, you face them honestly, learn from them, and carry them as part of the person you are becoming. Imagine standing at a crossroads. Whichever path you take, you will influence not only your own life, but the lives of others. Your words may encourage or wound. Your actions may help or harm. There is no escaping this network of ripples, no secret clause that allows you to step outside the responsibility of being human, but rather than hiding from that truth, you can embrace it. The heavy bag of responsibility is not a curse. It is proof that your choices matter, that you are not a shadow drifting without consequence. To carry it is to accept your freedom fully, to live awake in a world where every step leaves a mark. Revolt begins in the moment you see clearly that life has no built-in meaning, and yet you refuse to collapse into despair. Camus called this the stance of rebellion against the absurd, not with weapons or fury, but with a stubborn yes to life itself. You recognize that the universe is indifferent, that there are no cosmic scripts or hidden promises waiting to justify your suffering. But instead of falling into nihilism, you rise. You say no to the lies of false consolation and no to the injustices that pretend to be destiny. But at the same time, you say yes to the experience of living, to the taste of coffee, to the sound of laughter, to the strange adventure of existing at all. This revolt is not bitterness. It is defiance filled with vitality. It is easy to confuse revolt with resentment. Resentment festers. It is anger turned sour, a refusal to forgive the world for being what it island. It leaves you trapped, blaming life for its unfairness, and paralyzed by the conviction that nothing is worth the effort. Camus' revolt is the opposite. It is active, not passive. It is the choice to live fully, even when you know the game is rigged, even when no ultimate victory waits at the end. Revolt is waking up each morning and deciding to keep playing anyway, not because the rules are fair, but because your presence on the field transforms the game. You see injustice, cruelty, suffering. Revolt does not deny these things or excuse them with easy explanations. It does not whisper that all pain has a reason, or that everything will balance out in some invisible plan. Instead, revolt looks directly at what is wrong and says no. No to the systems that grind people down. No to the voices that demand silence. No to the idea that cruelty is inevitable. But revolt does not stop there. It pairs that no with a yes. Yes to solidarity, yes to joy where you find it, yes to the stubborn act of creating meaning where none is given. Camus imagined Sisyphus pushing his boulder up the hill, knowing it would roll down again. Resentment would see only punishment in the endless climb. Revolt sees the climb as a canvas. The hill remains, but so does the choice to meet it with strength, dignity, and even laughter. By embracing the struggle rather than fleeing it, you transform it into something bearable, even beautiful. The absurdity remains, but it no longer crushes you. You live in spite of it, and that in itself is a victory. When you face your own nights of doubt, when the world feels heavy and meaningless, remember the difference. Nihilism whispers that nothing matters. Resentment whispers that life has wronged you. Revolt stands between them and insists that you are still free to create, to resist, to celebrate, to care. It is not about winning. It is about refusing to surrender your spirit. To revolt is to live with open eyes and still declare, yes, I will go on. You have probably heard people say they are searching for meaning, as if it were an object hidden somewhere in the world, waiting to be found like a coin in the grass or a treasure buried under sand. The word itself often sounds like a noun, solid and fixed, something you either possess or you do not. But Camus and Sartre would both tell you that meaning does not sit out there, fully formed, waiting for discovery. Meaning is not a noun to be hunted, it is a verb to be practiced. To mean is to do, to create, to commit, to care. You do not stumble upon meaning one day like a prize. You build it through the way you live. Think of an artist at work. The canvas is empty, and there is no guarantee that what they create will be good or admired. But each brushstroke carries intention, effort, and presence. Meaning emerges not because the canvas was magical, but because the artist poured something of themselves into it. Your life is much the same. Commitments, craft, and care are your brushstrokes. They are not proof that life has a built-in purpose, but they are the way you give shape to the void. Meaning is not found, it is made. Commitments are the anchors that steady you in the sea of possibility. You cannot live every life at once, so you choose. A friendship you nurture, a cause you defend, a skill you decide to learn deeply. Each commitment is a way of saying, "This is where I will plant myself and grow." Craft is the way you carry those commitments, not rushing through them as chores, but treating them as practices worthy of patience and pride. And care is what breathes life into both, reminding you that the weight of your effort matters because it touches not just you, but others as well. Together, these acts form the verb of meaning. It is easy to get caught in the trap of waiting for meaning to appear before you act. You want certainty that what you do matters before you commit, but that is backward. It is the act of committing that makes it matter. Sartre insisted that you define yourself by what you do, not by waiting for some divine or cosmic stamp of approval. A student studying late into the night, a friend showing up when it is inconvenient, a worker perfecting the smallest detail, each of these choices may seem small, but they accumulate into the shape of a meaningful life. So the question is not, what is the meaning of life, as if there were a single answer carved into the stars. The question is, how will you mean today? How will you bring intention to the things you touch, the people you encounter, the work you carry out? The hunt for meaning as a noun only leads to frustration, but the practice of meaning as a verb transforms each ordinary act into something alive. In the end, life may not come with a script, but you can still write lines worth speaking. The basket of laundry waits in the corner, a small mountain of shirts and socks that never seems to shrink. Your email inbox blinks with unread messages, most of them routine, some of them pointless, all of them demanding attention. These ordinary scenes are not glamorous, not dramatic, and yet they make up so much of life. It is easy to feel crushed by them, to treat them as proof that existence is nothing more than an endless loop of chores. But Camus would remind you that the courage of revolt is not only found in the face of great tragedies or crises, it is also found in the return to these ordinary tasks, carried out with a new stance. When you wake up to the absurd, when you recognize that life has no secret meaning waiting in the wings, you might think it demands some huge gesture. You imagine quitting everything, moving across the world, making a dramatic break. But Camus and Sartre both understood that the real test comes after the revelation. After the night of doubt, or the philosophical breakthrough, you must return to the same laundry, the same inbox, the same hallway. The question is not whether the tasks have changed. They have not. The question is whether you have. To return courageously means to face these ordinary scenes with lucidity. You no longer pretend that folding clothes or answering emails will unlock some grand destiny. You see them clearly as what they are. But instead of despairing, you meet them with a self-chosen stance. You fold the shirt as carefully as if it mattered. You write the email with honesty, even if it is just a reply to a colleague. You bring care into the smallest of tasks, not because the world has forced you to, but because you have chosen to. That choice transforms them from burdens into affirmations of your freedom. There is rebellion hidden here, subtle and quiet. By treating the ordinary with intention, you refuse to let life reduce you to a machine. You are not folding laundry only because it must be done, but because you have decided to live fully even in the mundane. You are not answering emails only because they demand it, but because you will not let repetition steal your dignity. This is revolt without shouting, rebellion without fire. It is the steady insistence that you will not slip back into sleepwalking through your days. When the laundry is finally folded, when the inbox is cleared, you step back and realize something powerful. The world has not changed, but the way you move through it has. You have taken what once felt like chains and turned them into chances to practice presence, honesty, and care. To return courageously is not to escape the ordinary, but to reclaim it. You stand in the same room, under the same light, surrounded by the same routines, and yet everything feels different, because the one who has returned is no longer the same. You drop the ball, you stumble through your words, you make a choice that unravels in front of you. Failure announces itself in so many small and large ways, and the sting always feels sharper than you expect. In that moment, it is easy to want to erase yourself, to pretend you never tried, to hide from the version of you who missed the mark. But Sartre would remind you that failure is not the end of your authorship. It is part of it. To live freely is to accept that mistakes will be written into your story, and to carry them with grace is itself an act of authorship. When you fail, the temptation is to collapse into shame. You tell yourself that one bad grade defines you, that one awkward conversation ruins your worth, that one broken promise means you are nothing. But these thoughts are illusions. You are not a single act frozen in time. You are the ongoing process of choosing, revising, and becoming. To reduce yourself to one failure is as false as reducing yourself to one success. Both are masks that hide the fuller picture of who you are. Grace begins when you recognize that failure is not erasure, but revision. An author does not throw away the entire book because of a bad sentence. They return to it, edit it, and sometimes keep the flawed part as a reminder of the struggle it took to write. Your life deserves the same patience. Each misstep is a draft, not a final verdict. You may regret what happened, but regret can be folded into growth. You can acknowledge the weight of your choices without letting them crush you. Camus might call this a revolt against despair. The world offers no guarantee that you will succeed, no promise that your efforts will always match your intentions, yet you choose to act anyway. And when you fail, you choose again, not by pretending it did not happen, but by facing it head on. Failure then becomes a teacher, not a tyrant. It reveals where you were unclear, unprepared, or afraid, and in doing so, it gives you material for the next chapter. You become the kind of person who can carry mistakes without being defined by them. Imagine looking back years from now. The memories that once burned with embarrassment or regret may appear softened, almost tender. You see them as part of your path, necessary steps in your authorship. To live gracefully is not to avoid failure, but to embrace it as part of your design. Each stumble shows that you dared to walk. Each missed mark shows that you dared to aim. To fail gracefully is to keep writing, even when the page is messy, to know that your worth is not undone by your mistakes, but refined by how you respond to them. The night is quiet, and the ceiling feels endless as you lie awake, thoughts tumbling over one another. Somewhere in the silence, a question arrives that is heavier than most. If there is no cosmic referee, no divine scoreboard keeping track of right and wrong, how do you decide how to live? It is tempting to think that without a higher judge anything goes, that freedom means chaos, that ethics disappears when the stars stay silent. But Sartre and Camus both rejected that. They believed that, in the absence of cosmic rules, the responsibility to create your own ethics becomes even more urgent. The world does not hand you morality. You must write it. Start with clarity. Midnight has a way of stripping away illusions. You see your choices for what they are, not what you want them to be. Clarity means refusing to hide behind excuses, refusing to let slogans or traditions do the thinking for you. It is the courage to admit when you are lying to yourself, when you are drifting into bad faith, when you are pretending you had no choice. An ethics built on clarity begins not with abstract laws, but with honesty. It says, I will not deceive myself about what I am doing or why. Then comes responsibility. Sartre argued that every choice you make is not just about you, but about the vision of humanity you project. When you act, you are in effect saying, this is what a human being can be. You cannot shrug off the ripple effects, because they exist whether you acknowledge them or not. Ethics after midnight is not about avoiding responsibility, but about carrying it willingly. It means owning your freedom fully, even when it feels heavy, and recognizing that your actions write part of the world others must live in. Finally, solidarity. Camus insisted that revolt is not only personal but shared. To say yes to life in the face of the absurd is also to say yes to the lives of others. Ethics without a referee cannot be selfish. It finds its grounding in the recognition that we are all thrown into the same silence, all pushing our own boulders, all searching for ways to live with dignity. Solidarity means refusing to build your freedom on someone else's chains. It means standing against injustice, not because a cosmic judge demands it, but because your shared humanity does. When you finally close your eyes and drift towards sleep, the silence of the universe has not changed. No voice has thundered from the sky to tell you what to do, and yet the quiet is not empty. You feel the weight of your freedom, the clarity of your choices, the responsibility you cannot escape, and the solidarity that ties you to others. Ethics after midnight is not handed down. It is built, moment by moment, in the way you choose to live. The absence of a referee is not the end of morality. It is the beginning of owning it. Revolt sounds dramatic, like storming barricades or shouting in the streets, but Camus imagined it differently. He saw it not as a single explosion, but as a daily stance, a way of living that refuses to bow to despair or illusions. To revolt is to say no to what diminishes you, and yes to what sustains you. Designing your revolt means shaping small, practical rights that keep you awake, lucid, and alive in a world that often tempts you to sleepwalk. It is not about grand gestures, but about steady defiance woven into the fabric of ordinary days. Start with the no list. These are the refusals that clear space for freedom. No to excuses that pretend you are not free. No to the voices that insist your worth is measured only by productivity or approval. No to habits that drain you of presence. Each no is a boundary, a way of saying, I will not live by someone else's script. This is not bitterness, but clarity. The courage to refuse is the first step toward choosing. Without it, you slip back into bad faith, hiding from your own responsibility. With it, you begin to shape the outline of a life that feels yours. Then comes the yes list. These are the affirmations that make revolt more than rejection. Yes to friendships that spark honesty. Yes to work that feels like craft instead of just survival. Yes to moments of wonder, however small, whether it is watching the sky change colour or savouring a laugh you did not expect. Saying yes does not erase the absurd, but it fills the silence with your own voice. It is the act of deciding what matters to you, even when the universe offers no guarantees. Add to this one daily act of defiant kindness. In a world that can feel indifferent or cruel, kindness itself becomes rebellion. Holding the door for someone, listening without distraction, offering help when it costs you something. These gestures are small, but they carry a charge of resistance. They insist that even in the face of meaninglessness, you can create meaning by caring. Kindness is not naive. It is an act of revolt against the pull of apathy. Finally, design for yourself one honest conversation each day. Not the routine chatter that fills silence, but words that matter. Speak honestly to a friend, a parent, a colleague, even to yourself in a journal. These conversations cut through the fog of roles and performances. They remind you that authenticity is not about appearances, but about honesty shared between free beings. To speak truthfully, even in small ways, is to claim your freedom and offer it to others. When you put these pieces together, the design of your revolt takes shape. No list, yes list, kindness, honesty, small, simple, repeatable. They do not overthrow the absurd, but they do allow you to live within it without surrender. Camus believed that revolt was not despairing but joyful, a stubborn embrace of life as it island. By designing your revolt in these ways, you refuse to be crushed and instead craft a rhythm of defiance that is both ordinary and extraordinary. You are walking through a hallway when you feel it. Someone's eyes are on you, and suddenly your stride changes. You adjust your posture, maybe smooth your clothes, maybe glance at your phone to look occupied. Nothing about you has really changed. But in that instant, you become aware of yourself as an object in someone else's vision. Sartre called this the look, the moment when you realize you are being seen and judged, and the effect can be overwhelming. You can feel trapped in their perception, shaped by their opinion, whether it is admiration or criticism. The gaze of others becomes a kind of prison. It happens in more subtle ways too. You post something online and find yourself refreshing to see how many people approve. You share an idea in class or at work, and suddenly feel smaller when no one responds. You laugh at a joke you do not find funny because you fear silence more than honesty. Each of these moments is the look shaping you, bending your freedom into a persona that exists for others. The danger is that you start living more for the gaze than for yourself. Your projects shrink, your authenticity dissolves, and you become a reflection of what others expect. But Sartre also believed that awareness of the look is not the end of freedom. You are not doomed to live as a puppet for other people's eyes. The key is to shift your attention from personas to projects. A persona is a mask, a performance built to please or protect. A project is an action you have chosen, something that carries meaning because you willed it into being. When you focus on projects, the gaze of others cannot fully imprison you, because your worth is tied not to their judgment but to the work itself. Imagine writing a story, learning an instrument, or building a friendship. These are projects, and they belong to you. Others may admire or mock them, but their gaze does not define the value. What matters is that you chose to pursue them, that you invested your freedom in them. The moment you anchor yourself in projects instead of personas, you reclaim your autonomy. The look may still be there, but it no longer dictates who you are. This does not mean you can escape judgment entirely. Humans will always see one another, and you will always feel the pull of the gaze, but you can resist letting it become a cage. When praised, you do not inflate into a hollow persona. When criticized, you do not collapse into shame. You return instead to the project itself, to the freedom that chose it and the meaning you are making through it. The hallway is still filled with eyes. The world is still a stage of judgment, but you walk differently now. You are not just an object in someone else's vision. You are a subject in motion, carrying projects that reflect your own choices. The gaze may follow, but it no longer owns you. The first light seeps through the blinds, faint at first, then stronger until the room begins to glow. You have been awake all night, thoughts circling, questions pressing, wrestling with the absurd, with freedom, with the weight of responsibility. Now, the sky shifts, painting the world in pale colours. Nothing outside has changed. The bills are still due, the chores still wait, the doubts still murmur, and yet something in you stirs. You realize that dawn is not just a natural event, it is a decision, the choice to step into the day, not as someone rescued by answers, but as someone resolved to live without them. It would be easy to imagine the rising sun as a promise, as if it were whispering that everything will be fine, that meaning has finally arrived, that the universe has hidden a secret just for you. But clarity after midnight tells you otherwise. The sun is not a messenger. It is a star burning without concern for your struggles. The light does not solve your questions. It simply illuminates them. You are still the one who must decide what they mean. You are still the one who must act. Dawn is not an answer. It is a reminder that the choice has returned to you. Sartre would say, this is the essence of freedom. Each new day confronts you with choices that no one else can make for you. Whether you succeed or fail, whether you love or retreat, whether you create or drift, the responsibility is yours. To wake up and step out is to accept that weight. Camus would call it revolt. The absurdity has not vanished, but you defy it by living anyway. To rise, to eat breakfast, to go to work or school, to greet a friend, each act becomes an affirmation. You are not waiting for rescue. You are choosing to continue. The courage of dawn lies in its ordinariness. It does not ask for grand declarations or flawless plans. It asks only that you show up. You fold the laundry, answer the messages, walk into the meeting, write a single line, speak a single truth. Small choices, but together they declare your stance. They say, I will not be crushed by meaninglessness. I will not vanish into roles or excuses. I will live this day as mine. In that sense, dawn is not given to you, it is authored by you. Each decision becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of a day that would otherwise remain blank. The light now fills the room fully, casting away the shadows of night. You take a breath and feel the weight of your freedom, heavy but alive. Nothing is solved, and perhaps nothing ever will be. But that is not despair. It is the ground on which you stand. You open the door, step outside, and feel the air against your skin. The sky is wide, the world indifferent, and yet you move forward. Dawn has arrived, not as salvation but as choice. And today, like every day, you choose to begin.